Andava, dan wyddys dwi today rydw hyd hysgol by Abertawe. Croeso cynnes i'r cyfarfod arbennig chwythau. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Williams. I'm the chair of the board of Swansea Bay University Health Board, and a very warm welcome this afternoon to what is a special board meeting. The board, as you know, is the governing body of the organisation. We have specific roles and responsibilities, and those include both looking to the future through setting strategic direction and overseeing delivery against in-year plans. We always have to make sure that we provide safe, high-quality services. We have to maintain good governance in everything we do, and we have to set the right tone and culture for the organisation. Now, the board meets formally on a bi-monthly basis, and at these meetings, our agenda will include the breadth of the board responsibilities. But there are times when the board has to meet outside our normal cycle, because decisions have to be made or something is so important that we have to take it as a special meeting. And we have such a special meeting today because we are considering the reopening of the freestanding midwifery unit at Neathport Talbot Hospital and of the home birth service, thereby increasing community level maternity birth choices. And of course, I will come back to that in a moment. But if I just turn to the agenda, we have apologies this afternoon from Andrew Jarrett, Tom Crick, Keith Lloyd, Deb Lewis, and we welcome Craig Wilson for Deb, from Raj Krishnan and Jennifer Davis. We also welcome Catherine Greaves as our new Director of Midwifery, Sharon Price as the Service Group Nurse Director for Singleton Over, and then we have Mitch Parker online from HIW. So croeso cynnes I bawb. So very warm welcome to you all. Can I just ask board members, are there any declarations of interest outside those you've already recorded on our register of interest and that apply to the agenda item under discussion this afternoon? I've not received any, so we will record that there are no specific declarations of interest. So, and I've not received any other matters for consideration because, of course, this is a special board meeting. So if we turn then to the item under consideration, as I've said, the services that we are considering this afternoon, they were suspended back in September 2021 because of staffing pressures that are associated with long and short-term sickness, the impact of COVID, and the high levels of maternity leave among staff. So as the birth centre and home birth services were suspended, resources were then centralised at Singleton Hospital in line with professional guidance. And of course, since then, we've experienced continuous staffing pressures, and that have placed a huge strain on our maternity services. We did last year make an investment of £750,000, and that saw the recruitment of additional midwives and support assistants. And over the last few months, the executive has been undertaking a thorough review of the current situation to establish whether or not it's safe to reopen the Neathport Talbot Birth Centre and home birth service. And the outcome of that review has brought us here today with paper in front of us to consider the reopening of these services. So we know there is a great deal of public interest in this matter, and of course we are meeting in public because of this, and so that members of the public can actually see the board outlook. Mothers and families are regularly asking our midwives and other staff when will they have the choice again to give birth at home or in Neathport Talbot. And of course the issue of choice is so very, very important, as we understand. But for us as a board, the key question to consider is it safe to reopen the service at this time? And that's very much the decision in front of us today. So you've had the paper, give you all the background information, and I'm now delighted to ask Catherine Greaves, Kathy Greaves, our new Director of Midwifery, if you'll take us through that paper, Kathy. You can take it if the board members have read it, so you don't need to take us through it in detail, but you need to take us through the key sections, please. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr dros chi. Over to you, Cathy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members, for the opportunity of being here today to present to you the paper and to talk to you on what is a very important milestone for maternity services and Swansea Bay University Health Board, and that being the first step to reinstating community midwifery services. As the Chair has said, I take the paper as read. And I just want to highlight a few of those points. So community-based services, which include home births and the freestanding midwifery unit, or the FMU as we refer to it, Anita Talbot, were suspended in September 21. To continue to provide safe care, maternity services were centralised at Singleton Hospital, and this limited women's choice as to where birth, and there were frustrations for the community-based maternity teams, as well as the women who were seeking support to birth elsewhere other than Singleton Hospital site. And the hospital was the only option for families where birth could take place. So a programme of work has been in place since May of 23 to focus on the reinstatement of a full offer of services to the population of Swansea Bay. We know, and this is really very well researched, the impact of limiting birth choices that women and families can make about the most appropriate place for their birth. And we also know that for women with the lowest risk, birthing outside of an obstetric unit has great benefits to their health and also to the preventing unnecessary interventions. So women and families' ability to make informed choices about their pregnancy and their birth are important issues that impact on where they choose to receive their care in pregnancy and childbirth. And we in health are the facilitators of information, environments and care pathways that support their choices. Preparing families for a healthy pregnancy and childbirth determine the outcomes for the long-term health of women and babies. We receive, as the Chair has already outlined, a number of inquiries and concerns at the lack of birth choices for women and the impact it is having on their preparedness for childbirth. So we know the issue of choice is integral to the women and families' decisions that they make. The Swansea Bay Annual Plan for 24 and 25 sets out the vision for maternity services in providing care that is equitable, efficient, timely, safe and person-centred. And it's the person-centred care that's really important to maternity services. And it's important for mothers and babies throughout the pregnancy and birth, and also their care following birth. This can have a positive impact on their health and life chances, and on the healthy development of children in those early years. Following an improvement in our sickness levels and successful recruitment campaigns, the establishment of the community staff now exceeds the levels required to safely recommence services. We have also recruited 8 team managers who will provide clinical leadership and capacity within the freestanding midwifery-led unit, who will also operationally manage the community teams for midwives to be able to seek support no matter the time of day or the place or where the care is being provided. While the levels of sickness within the obstetric unit are above target, we remain able to operate staffing at a complement level without relying on community staff. Community staff will only be asked to work on our obstetric unit during times of business continuity, and this is on par with every other maternity services across the UK. And this has been clearly set out through our escalation policy and processes. Employer-in-place choices, a midwifery refresher programme has been in place for last year to address the provision and the knowledge before the services are safe to reopen. And on this basis, we are assured we can safely reopen the freestanding midwifery unit on the 16th of September and reinstate home births from the 21st of October, should the board be supportive of the recommendations. This will significantly support birth in the right place, reduce the level of activity that we're seeing in Singleton Hospital site, which will in turn improve staff and the women's experience and the outcome and experiences for the wider families of Swansea Bay. We do also acknowledge within the paper that the temporary closure of maternity services at Princess of Wales Hospital for 12 weeks will increase the demand on our services. So by having birth choices available in every setting, this will lessen the impact on the Singleton Hospital site. The safety gateways we have worked through to reach this point give confidence that we are now in a safe and sustainable position to reinstate community-based maternity services, and would ask the board to support the recommendations as set out in the report. And I wish to thank you all for hearing my review of the paper, and I'm more than happy to take questions, Chair.
Talking about Kathy. Well, I'm going to open it up for questions now, please. Angela.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Catherine. That's really, really helpful and comprehensive update. I've really got just a couple of comments. One is, I think the importance of choice is you outlined that, and we've, reading the paper and really bringing it back to the forefront as well is around the reduction of risks of patients giving birth in an FMU compared to an obstetric unit, because the level of interventions is higher in an obstetric unit. And I think that's quite important and powerful to mention that we didn't have the choice for the number of 3 years now to be able to give to patients. And then I think the other bit for me around choice, it's got to be really promoted so that all women now in Swansea Bay, if the decision were to be made to open the unit, will have the information to make that informed choice to give birth in a midwifery unit, and all that all other community clinicians are all aware of that promotion of that particular pathway. And then my second point is around, we mentioned around staffing levels, and you said we're reaching the percentages of now in terms of the number. I think it's also important to draw out that the right competence and the right training is in place, because it's a new remit, working in an FMU then compared to an obstetric unit, and that we've got assurance that the staff are supported throughout that journey, transitioning into working in an FMU, and that remit is clear to them, that they're working differently now, and the escalation pathways and the clinical pathways are all clear to them as well. So those would be my comments.
So I've got Nuria, Rena, Pat, Nicola, then Anne-Louise, and then Steve. So we're going to have the whole board comment in, I think, because this is such an important item. But Nuria, shall I turn to you? And Kathy, what we'll do is we'll take 2 or 3 questions, see if the themes are coming together, and then I'll ask you to sort of comment on a sort of thematic basis as we go through. Okay? Thank you. So Nuria, over to you.
I'd be delighted to know that Angela has covered a lot of the questions that I've asked her, I'm sure. I think that I am delighted that we're in this position at this point in time. The sustainability, as you know, is keen in terms of those staffing models and that assurance that you can provide us. I think for me, it's about checking that there's appropriate funding that follows patients that would otherwise go to the Prince of Wales, so that we do have that kind of trail. And alongside that is that assurance that we have plans in place to communicate in the opening of the centre with our communities, because if we want to give them choice, then we need to let them know how they can exercise that choice.
Thank you very much, Nuria. So we've got the whole question of the sustainability. We've got the question of the remit coming in now for, and then of course the funding, and particularly the reimbursement from Cwm Taf Morgannwg in terms of support we'll be giving following the closure of Princess of Wales for 12 weeks. So we'll just take Rena and Pat, and then we'll stop for a synopsis. Rena, over to you.
It's linked to the Princess of Wales. I've had concerns expressed to me in the community about the impact of the Princess of Wales closure. And I was just wondering whether, one, we'd had sufficient consultation with Cwm Taf on this closure date, because in some ways it's not entirely convenient that we haven't quite reopened everything. We've got the pressure of that, which is obviously causing some particular pressure on a singleton at the moment. So what I wanted, I suppose, is reassurance that we're coping with that additional pressure, and that in a sense, we need to get a message out, I feel, to the public at large, in terms of reassurance that we have got sufficient capacity, because that is the concern that's being expressed.
Thank you, Rena. That links to the sustainability issue as well. So Pat, would you like to come in now, and then we'll for Kathy to come.
Very similar themes, actually. I was just wondering whether, if the Prince of Wales Hospital closed for longer than 12 weeks, what the impact would be, because obviously, we ended up shut for 3 years. So I just wondering what the impact of that. And then your assumption of 26.9% for cover for sickness, and is that going to be sufficient given the sickness levels in the central unit, and the possible impact on staff morale of the maternity review? It's just sort of something on.
Thank you. Really important points there. So Kathy, shall I ask you to come back on those points so far then, please.
Absolutely. So I'll take the point of sustainability first, Chair, if I may. So within the maternity services, you will be aware of the investment in terms of recruitment, and part of that investment has also included over-recruitment of staff within the maternity services. So although Birth Rate Plus allows for a 26.9% uplift, which we are compliant with, we are above the compliance in terms of 26.9% to think about the future-proofing of our services. We've also developed a workforce plan that's looking at our current services and what our future model of staffing might need to look like. And we're working very, very closely with our OD colleagues in terms of finalising that piece of work. So it's a really, really thorough and extensive piece of work that's been undertaken. We also work very, very closely with HEIW in terms of planning the perinatal workforce across Wales. There's a North Wales piece of work that's taking place, and we are part of that and in consultation with HEIW around that. But that also includes not only our workforce of midwives, neonatal nurses and doctors for maternity services in Wales, but it also looks at what the future potential of the services could look like, because our women are becoming very, very complex who are entering pregnancies, and we need to plan for that. So we're absolutely at the forefront of that planning in that space as well. The other thing that we're just about to start, which is hopefully starting in November now, is that we are also involved in planning international recruitment and seeing what opportunities are available for working collaboratively across the rest of the world in terms of what we can attract into Swansea Bay. And we are anticipating taking our first 3 recruits into that programme in November of this year. And we've been working with the Welsh Government in terms of funding for that arrangement, so that we will have supportive mechanisms, staff for those international recruitments, so that we can plan for what their educational requirements are going to be, and to ensure that we have assurances around their suitability and capability to work within maternity services in the UK. So those are in terms of the sustainability from that perspective. In terms of the flow of women coming from the Princess of Wales during that closure, we have been engaged with CTM at the point that we were asked to support them. Now, unfortunately for the Princess of Wales, the requirements of the work that needs to be undertaken to upgrade their services has come at a very critical point, which required immediate response to. So it's not like we've had a year to plan for this. They haven't had a year, and that's something that they've had to manage with us. So we have been working very, very closely with that team around what that looks like. That work is anticipated to be around 11 to 20 women per month. And what I can say is last week, which was our first week working with CTM, we actually didn't have any women come through our services for birth on the Singleton Hospital site. We are monitoring the flow of women from the point of view of birth, as well as any of those women that might need antenatal assessment. We think they might be in labour, but we've also got arrangements in place with CTM that those women are assessed as close to home as possible to prevent unwasted journeys for those women. So that monitoring is in place, and we have a daily sit rep with CTM that's looking at activity across the whole of the network within CUMTAF, within Swansea Bay and Cardiff and Vale, who are also the other feeder unit for women flowing from Princess of Wales. And that is going very well, and I feel very reassured by the mechanisms that we've got in place to have those discussions with POW. Part of that preparedness is also making sure that we're working with planners, so that any women who are receiving care within Singleton Hospital, that we are able to recharge for those services that we are providing. So all of that is in train and in place. So, and we've also got some arrangements around governance for the women if there are incidents or concerns that arise as a result of their care with us here in Swansea Bay. We have also been working with corporate communication teams to prepare for the closure of POW, and we did have a series of communications that went out to our populations. However, Rena, I do accept that it's really good to revisit those, so that we will certainly do that. And in terms of the birth centre, we've also got a plan in place of communications that will be going out to reignite the interest in our birth centre in Eden Pretoria and our home birthing services. And our community teams are really quite excited about some of the videos that they're preparing as part of that communications that we're going to be sending out to the communities, and they will also be on our website as well. So from that perspective, So in terms of the impact of the pressures, as soon as I think I've dealt with that, I think I've dealt with the uplift of staff and the future workforce planning chairs. Unless there are any other questions to that information I've shared.
I think there was one point on staff morale, and I know that this is one of Nicola's points as well. I'm going to bring Nicola in next. Would you like to comment on staff morale first?
Yes.
Before I bring Nicola in for her other points?
Sure. So in terms of our community teams, they are absolutely sitting on the edge of their seats in the hope that the board is going to support the decision. This is something that is a choice for them in terms of their vocation. You become a community midwife because you want to provide continuity of care. We know that continuity keeps women safe, so the midwives are absolutely static, thinking that the service could be reinstated. They are midwives who are skilled and trained to provide care in the community, including birth and postnatal care. This is something that they've done for many, many years. It's been suspended for a period that they are very, very keen to be part of as well. That's the whole point of being a community midwife. So providing care in homes or in the birthing centres is something that they're already prepared for and excited about. In terms of our aesthetic teams, we've tried to keep the communications around the reintroduction of services at the birth centre and in the community to very, very low key, because we don't want to raise expectations among our staff for them not to be realised. And that's really, really very important in terms of managing staff morale. But in terms of staff morale around the current position and the flows from PW, staff are doing really, really well. We've had a flow of staff from PW into our teams as well in Singleton, and we've had some tea and transfer meetings with them. They've had some induction period. They've been reintegrated into our teams, and they're really quite excited about having them there. So staff at the moment are really in a great place.
And we can tell you're really excited as well, Kathy.
Yes.
That was really good to us, very keen. So Nicola, I know that was one of your points on staff morale. So has Kathy answered that? And would you like to pick up on your other points, please?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for that detailed report. Yeah, I just wanted to pass on. I have spoken to Neath Talbot Council, and they welcome the reopening of the birthing centre. In a personal note, I'm delighted to see the service reopening, having had a child 3 years ago, and it's wonderful to have choice available to expectant mums. The other question I had was regarding funding, and I think you've covered that already. So I just want to say I would welcome the reopening.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and thank you for liaising with colleagues in the Sport Talbot Council as well. We appreciate that. Thank you. So I think Anne-Louise next.
All my points have been covered. It's obviously something that we've all been concerned about. Mine relates to the fact, my understanding is that the community midwifery team is quite separate in terms of when you're recruiting someone from the obstetric centre. I recognise that there have been some problems, sickness levels in the obstetric centre, but they're okay in the community at the moment. But how sure are you that there won't be issues, and the Princess of Wales issue kind of impacts on that as well, and that we can keep protected that community team, and we don't have to pull them off to say, you know, we've had 20 this month of babies coming in from Gent. We need to do something about it. And for the future, how do we make sure that we keep that level of staffing up? How do we put out that we have a service not only that's safe, but it is going to continue? It's not going to suddenly close again.
Thank you very much. So first of all, what I would say is we haven't realised what we were anticipating from Cwmtâp Morgannwg, but what we have done and is still in place is the flow of staff to support the obstetric services so that birth happens in the right place for the right women with the right teams. The community do not get called to support the obstetric unit unless there is a business continuity episode. And I think we've had one recently, and the staff came in for a period of 4 hours and then were released back into the community. So there is always going to be business continuity where we do have to mobilise our whole team, but that doesn't mean that community is our first line for mobilisation. We will mobilise our specialists, ourselves as managers will be also mobilised to support the clinical teams in that area, and we make sure that we are planning that acuity very, very well. In Wales, that we have a maternity and neonatal network, which we're all very much connected it, we have the opportunity of both local and national escalation for support during periods of high acuity. Today, Cardiff is one of those who are looking around for support from the other units in Wales, and we've already had that meeting this morning to see where we can support them. So in terms of managing that acuity safely to ensure that women get the care in the right place, there is a good governance system in place that manages that. Birth Rate Plus is a staffing assessment that happens minimally every 3 years, or as soon as you believe that you have a service change that you need to then ask them to come back in and recalculate our staffing levels. Our current Birth Rate Plus security, which we're a year into that cycle, has been calculated with a community intrapartum care system already considered in the staffing levels. So that's something that we monitor very, very closely and would seek support for should we notice any change in that. The other thing that's very, very important to note is that if you have a look at the ONS data across the UK, we are seeing a downward trend in terms of birth numbers. It's the complexity of the women who are presenting that has changed. So it's data that we are trying to predict, but as you can imagine, our cohort of families change every 9 months. And you can never really anticipate what they're going to look like. What we do know is that 46% of what we do every day is planned. So there is planned care for women with the highest risk in our obstetric units. And 54% of what we do is like any other front door service that we respond to and provide the care for. But our staffing is based on needing to respond to that 54% because we don't know what's going to come through the front door.
Thank you. Okay, so Steve, if I turn to you next, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's another aspect of a question that's been asked by colleagues, but I'm looking at the table on page 4, which is, if you like, a de-escalation chart going from, you've got fewer than 35 whole-time equivalents, so we can centralise that. If you've got more than 40, we open up to the world. How do we manage potential de-escalation of that? If half a dozen colleagues got, if there's a flu outbreak or something like that, I assume we don't immediately close everything down again. So how would you manage that? You're probably going to say variable pay, and the Director of Finance is a long way away from you.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. So absolutely, sickness is sickness. You never know what's going to come around the corner. Similarly around parenting leave, which we are a predominant female workforce, a very young female workforce that we plan for, which is why we have the 26.9% uplift in our staffing requirements, but also the commitment to over-recruit. So we are trying to consider and head off some of that we know is a challenge for us at any time. Our staff also have to do an increasing number of training days, which is also in that calculation. So our staff are released to train in those areas. And then we also have then the daily acuity. So on a daily basis, as a service, we are looking at activity in the area to make sure that we've got the staff in the right place. What we don't do is staff buildings, we staff acuity, we staff the women and the women's needs. And that's how we tend to operate on a daily basis when we're thinking about what does our service need today? Where are we?
What has to happen for you to ask us all to get back together again and consider closing down the Neath Talbot Centre again?
Absolutely. And what won't be happening, because we are planning for that, Stephen, is that we are future-proofing that service. This is at the forefront of what we do, and on the governance within maternity services is thinking about our changing population. Changing because of government policy, changing because of local need, changing because of birth, number of women presenting pregnant who will require that care. But we are constantly in that cycle of knowing and understanding what our rosters are telling us that we need to do and planning to uplift in that space. We've got 17 new midwives starting with us at the end of September into early October. They are newly recruited midwives who have trained with us from Swansea University. We also get an awful lot of student midwives who have had to go over the border because they can't get training places in Wales. And we're working with HEIW at the moment to try and create an almost like clearance system like UCAS does. So there will be student midwives in England who can't place for jobs as midwives once they've qualified, but that they might be residents in Wales, and we're keen to utilise that stream of really recruited and qualified midwives as well. So it's not something that happens once, even it's something that happens on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly. And as I've alluded to in terms of Birth Rate Plus, if we saw a change in our service, that we would invite them back in to recalculate with us what our requirements are. But on a minimum, we do that every 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Steve, and I think that speaks to Angela's point as well about the remit and the future focus. So I think that makes that connection there. So thank you for that. So Jackie, shall I come to you?
Just very briefly, I wanted to ask about staff morale, but not obviously just the independent birth unit, but the obstetric unit, that's covered. But I just wanted to know whether the staff feel this is safe, both in terms of the central unit and the obstetric unit. Are your staff telling you, yeah, we're happy and we feel we can deliver safe care?
In a very short answer, Jackie, yes, they do feel like that. They've always felt like that. They've known that model exists within Swansea Bay, and it's been able to provide it again to the women. They know that giving women choice impacts the outcomes for them, and that's what makes staff happy. Our midwives come into this job vocationally because they want to do the very best for those women and their families, and they know that ensuring that we have the full offer of services to make sure that they're birthing in the right place and having care in the right place has an impact on them, and that's what their whole ethos is around care for families that we care for. So they are absolutely delighted at the thought that we might be in a space where this is being considered by the board. And what we do also know in terms of the staff on the Singleton site, for 3 years, they have been sustaining the activity for 3,500 births. And it's a lot of work. It's not just a one visit for a birth. There's lots of times when women might come to us for something that they are having to deal with on a daily basis. So the ability to be able to share that across the whole of the service in the right place, because we don't want to impact on the interventions that women don't need, and we do want to impact where they do need them. So making sure that women are in the right place will have huge benefits for everybody.
Jane, please come in.
It's just one point on the midwifery refresher programme.
Yes.
It had a shortfall of 8.5%. Have they been covered now before the reopening?
Absolutely, Jean. It's an ongoing programme. As I was trying to explain to Stephen, it's not a programme that will ever be just a one-shot opportunity. It's something that's an ongoing recruitment issue. Our staff, regardless of where they work, as I've said, it's a young female-dominated workforce who will be planning for their families as well. And as part of that planning, we have that uplift and the future-proofing by bringing on board these newly recruited midwives, as well as the other streams that we're looking at, that will ensure that we are maintaining our staffing levels as per the Birth Security is telling us we need to do.
I think, Chair, we make the point that data capture through the reintroduction of this service, I think, is key.
Yes,
because it is such a key facet of the population health strategy.
absolutely. You're absolutely right. And just on that point, Jean, one of the things that happened prior to the closure, and will obviously recommence now if it's supported, is that when we have women birthing in other areas who may require a transfer, we do an immediate review around that care to make sure the care was in the right place in the first place, what led to the need for women to transfer, and did we do that timely and safely, and what was the outcome for the mother and baby. For women who are birthing in low risk settings, where women do sometimes need to be transferred in, is because they're looking for something more in terms of pain relief that can be offered in a home birth or a birth centre, so things like epidural, things like that. So yeah.
And Gina make a really good point about data sets. There is a lot of work underway currently to look at the different data sets required for different services across the piece. And the incoming committee will have a really central role in the design and development of data sets as well. It's a really important point. Sarah, there's been a lot of talk this afternoon around staffing levels and around the management of both short and long-term sickness. So as you know, the professional head of the workforce function for the health board, could you give board your view on the sustainability of reopening given the position we're in around recruitment, management of sickness levels, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. To recognise the significant amount of work that Kathy and the team have done. It's been a significant journey, and it's really lovely to hear that reinforcement around morale. And I think they're the right questions for us to really consider in that respect, because taking the staff with us is going to be incredibly important as we continue on this journey. So thank you, Kathy and team, in that respect. From my perspective, it's an improving position. There is always opportunity to keep improving, and we need to keep our eye on the ball in terms of that. But certainly from a sickness perspective, looking at the figures from today. In month overall, we're at 6.83% for maternity and neonate. So that is an improving position. Recognising we've had some questions around some hotspot areas, we can't lose sight of those hotspot areas. Some of those hotspot areas relate to very small teams and therefore have inflated percentages. We've also, the team are supporting Kathy and the team in terms of deeper dives around some of the areas. Now, while that hasn't been finalised, we are very in touch with, as we progress through that, some of the insights that have been provided before that gets confirmed. So what it is indicating to us is that there is an opportunity for us to support managers in how they manage the process from the management attendance at work. So when that is finalised, there will be some key recommendations that we are likely to take to the ward committee, are we not, Kathy? And in that respect, we have deployed somebody within the workforce at a HR business partner level to really focus on sickness. One of the key areas will be supported maternity and neonates in terms of our hotspot areas to ensure that we maintain that consistent approach around that and take the learning from the deeper dives to ensure we do the right actions to support the staff. In terms of recruitment, Kathy has already shared with you, and I endorse and support that in terms of assurance. So from my perspective, fully support the recommendation and recognising important for us to keep an eye on the morale of the staff in this regard.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you. Are there any comments, Sarah, on that professional opinion to the board, or are there any other issues that board members want to raise, please? No? Thank you. So, Richard, I'm going to hand over to you for concluding remarks.
Thank you very much. Kathy, thanks ever so much for that. Your enthusiasm comes across in spades in terms of what you're describing to us. And it's really clear. And what you've outlined really is some real clarity about the benefits of reopening that are around choice and outcomes importantly as well. The one thing that's going to be important in this, as we know from other aspects of our maternity services, is making sure that the quality and the safety of the service we provide is of the highest possible standards. So I would like to see alongside this that we're keeping an eye on what are the characteristics of a high performing and midwifery-led unit. Are we meeting those standards? And making sure that we check on those. I'm also conscious as well at the same time when the lower risk births come out of Singleton and underneath that may skew our numbers in other areas of the service. So thinking about them alongside each other, but having a particular eye on this, particularly as we open it up and the service restarts, will be absolutely key. So if I can have your assurance that you'll be looking at that as well, certainly Jan, from my perspective, you've got my full support in terms of what you're proposing as the reopening.
Very much. Before moving to the recommendation, Mitch, I know that you're with us as an observer this afternoon from HIW, but was there anything you did want to say?
Thank you, Chair. There's nothing in particular from myself, and I did open the questionnaire to colleagues, and I haven't received any questions. But thank you for asking.
And thank you for being with us this afternoon. We appreciate it. So if we can move to the recommendations, then the first one is, can we take assurance from what we've read and heard, content of the paper, all the safety gateways that the team has worked through in terms of suggesting and recommending the reinstatement of the community pathways? So we are assured. And then can we agree then the reinstatement timeline for the Neathcote Talbot Birth Centre? That's the freestanding midwifery unit. And that's for next Monday, the 16th of September, 2024. And then can we agree the reinstatement timeline for home birth services then from Monday, the 21st of October, 2024? Yes, and then also in terms of the ongoing oversight, staffing levels, sickness, absence management, that would be workforce and OD. Overarching safety, that would be quality and safety. And then, Jean, when the new committee comes in, the data set compilation and development as part of the overarching work around that. Is that okay? Thank you. So I did say at the beginning that there were times when there were such important matters that the board would have to meet outside its normal business cycle and give due care and attention to that particular important item. And I hope that everyone will agree, and those who will watch this, that we have given real serious consideration to the safety and quality issues associated with reopening the Neathport Talbot Birth Centre and home births. And it's really important that members of the public would see the board at work on this and know the level of scrutiny to which the team compiled this report. And Kathy, we need to ask you to take back to the team our grateful thanks and appreciation, as we appreciate the work that we know Raj and Hazel did at executive level. And thanks to everyone this afternoon for the quality of the contributions that everyone has made. It's a really important decision that the board's made this afternoon, both for our population, because it gives mums and families a greater choice around where to give birth. And for our staff, it also means that they can use their skills and experience in the way that most suits them. And then for the service as a whole, it will mean that we are relieving some of the pressures on staff at Singleton. And Kathy, we do want you to take back our particular thanks to staff in the expected unit in Singleton. You know, it's been a long, hard slog over the last 3 years, and we are grateful for everything that we've done. And of course, our focus now moves to making sure that women and families know of the decision we've made and that they will be having greater choice. And anybody watching this, we'd like you to really discuss your situation with your midwife so that you make the best possible decision for you and your family around your birthing place. So a major step forward. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd eto am eich cyfraniadau. Thank you all very much again for your contributions, and dwi'n gael y cyfarfod now, and I'll now close the meeting. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you all so very much.
Very good.